The blast destroys G20, but does not destroy the other 3 columns and the transfer beam. With the building still intact, the blast wave then rips through the atrium of the Murrah. It smashes into the floors above at more than 16,000 kilometers per hour. There are 8 stories of concrete floor slabs in the Murrah connected to 9 supporting columns. But the second floor is also connected to the transfer beam that holds up the columns. This proves a critical factor as the blast wave powers through the building. Dr. Eve Hinman, a blast expert, worked with Dr. Osteras on the investigation.
I think of the floor slabs often as the sail, like a sail on a sailboat, because they have so much surface area that the blast can act on.
The blast forces up the floor slabs on the lower 4 stories.
Blast pressure comes in, lifts the floor slab up, and the floor slabs just come up and shear off the columns, and then gravity takes over, and down they come.
And so within milliseconds, we got collapse of floor slabs on the 2nd through 5th floor.
About 100 milliseconds after the explosion, the time it takes for the human brain to recognize an image, the 3rd and 4th floors collapse onto the 2nd, which is still attached to the transfer beam. This added weight means the 2nd floor also gives way, but crucially, its connection to the transfer beam remains intact. The beam is ripped off the columns by the falling floor and dragged into the building.
My theory is that when the floor slabs came down, they pulled the transfer girder in. The transfer girder rolled over.
As that 3rd floor slab collapsed and fell into the debris, it is pulling on the top edge of the transfer beam. And there's nothing to resist that force.
100 milliseconds after the blast. The transfer beam is pulled down and around by the falling floor. 200 milliseconds after the blast. The falling transfer beam sets off what engineers call progressive collapse.
Progressive collapse is collapse that spreads beyond the initial zone of damage.
1 second after the blast, progressive collapse begins to destroy the Murrah building.
You knock over one domino, that falls and it knocks over the next, and so on, and you get this progressive chain reaction.
The transfer beam is the critical element or domino in the Murrah. It supports the columns that in turn support the 7 stories above. With the transfer beam gone, the upper floors are fatally weakened, and the building begins to collapse.
Gravity takes another 5 seconds or so to bring the building down.
It's all over in 7 seconds. This is the time it takes the 9th story floor to drop the 31 meters to the ground. More than 5,000 square meters of steel-reinforced concrete collapses into a 2-story high pile of rubble.